Welcome. I'm your host, Michelle B Griffin. As an author, speaker, and certified personal brand and PR strategist, I'm here to empower you to get visible, build your personal brand, and own your lane as a visible brand authority and thought leader in your space. I'm super excited you're here. Now let's get going with today's show. Welcome. I'm your host, Michelle B Griffin. As an author, speaker, and certified personal brand and PR strategist, I'm here to empower you to get visible, build your personal brand, and own your lane as a visible brand authority and thought leader in your space. I'm super excited you're here. Now let's get going with today's show. Welcome everybody to this week's episode. I'm your host, Michelle B Griffin. Today we're talking all about how to not overthink and get your big idea and business book out into the world. So I'm thrilled to welcome to the show author and ghostwriter Emily Crookston to the show.
Hey, Michelle. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here and congrats, because just last week, Emily's book, Unwritten, launched. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you. But you worked really hard to get your big idea and your business book. So I want to get into that. But before we do, for those who haven't met you yet, Emily, tell us a little bit about what you do, who you help, and how you do it.
I'm the owner of the Pocket PhD. So I used to be a philosophy professor. That's where the PhD comes from. I do have a PhD. I'm a ghostwriter. I'm a developmental editor, and I help entrepreneurs, business owners, people who want to become authors and thought leaders get their big ideas out of their heads and into the hands of their fans. I work with people who I have an idea and I have no idea how to get it out there. We work on the outline, we figure out what the book is about, and we write the book to, people who are like, maybe I want to write a book. I'm not sure, but I know that I have this big idea and I want that to kind of orient everything in my business. And so I really work with them to kind of get the content sort of rowing in the same direction or align everything so that they can meet the business goals that they have.
Writing my business book this year, I can tell you the skills and the expertise that you bring to help people that you just told us and then you talk about in the book. Can I tell you that I sometimes would say, I wish I had Emily when I was struggling on some of the things, because you were so kind to send me this book, and it's been pivotal to me as I was writing the book, but I know it could be very helpful for those about to, but you really walk us through the things to help us not overthink, because that's what I've done. And in my defense, I took a 7-step framework, brought it down to 4. So I'm not going to be too hard on myself because that's a big feat. But there are a lot of women, and especially, people who aspire to be thought leaders, who never get their big ideas and their work out in the world. And that makes me really sad, because my big mission is to create more women thought leaders with the work I do.
Yes.
And you do this too. So for those who are like, Michelle, Emily, this is such a great episode. I have a big idea, possibly, maybe. I want to write a business book. Where do we start?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I always tell people to sort of start with the content you're already creating. As business owners, we are all creating content all of the time. And even if you don't think what you're doing is creating content, maybe you're writing talks, you're giving presentations, you're trainings for your people. That's all content. That's all stuff that you're putting out into the world and ideas, and let alone the social media posts you're creating, the maybe blog posts that you're writing. You're creating so much and putting out so many creative ideas. That's the place to start. Mind what you have and look for those gems, So I say, look back on the past month or 2 months of all the content you've created and look for themes. What are you writing? What are you talking about most? And then the really important thing is not just topics, not just I've got an idea about productivity or whatever your topic is, but your unique angle on that topic. It's so important to come at the topic with a point of view, because that's the thing that sets you apart from your competition. That's the thing that makes reading your book different from Googling how to do X, Y, and Z, right, within your industry, because you have that unique take on the idea. So once you get into those kind of questions, you start asking yourself that, and you see how that connects to your business goals, most importantly, then, you can start moving ahead to the book.
Love that. And, I want to just say you are going to really open up to your business when you write a business book? Because I've done that this year. I told you before we went live that the book 6 months ago looks nothing like today's version, because I realized the framework was maybe too long, and then the model I was delivering it and how I wanted to show up, I had an epiphany. And so I quickly changed everything. Well, not so quickly, but it took a while, but it's a better product. I'm happier now. But it actually can really help you save time, energy, sanity, and kind of jumpstart your business, because it really forces you to condense things, see what lights you up, maybe where there's opportunities, there's gaps. So it's a real telling process in itself to get your big idea that you want to be known for, and bring it to a book, match it to a business ecosystem. It's such a beautiful thing. And you talk about it so well, and all your clients that you help, you really do give some great examples. But you know what else you give? You give these 3 ways, and I'm shaking. Oh my gosh, she's talking to me. You gave those 3 things that people hold themselves back, or, never see their big ideas. So can you share those with us?
Yes, yes. So I call them the 3 traps that authors fall into. And I wrote 2 books that are 75% of the way finished, sitting somewhere on my hard drive before I finished this book, the book that we're holding in our hands today. So I've been there too, and I've definitely been the overthinker. And that's a big motivation for me writing this book. The first trap is spending way too much time planning. It's really easy for high achievers, people who are really focused on everything and hyper-focused and hyper-productive, to overthink the planning process and to rewrite outlines 100 times, or to just, let me do one more mind mapping exercise. Someone's talking about this exercise for starting your book. Let me try that, So there's that planning stage that can go on and on and on. And then you maybe settle on an idea and you finally start writing. And what happens? You overthink the writing of the book. Yes. You spend 3 months writing chapter 1, right? Or you rewriting chapter 1 over and over with. You're editing bits and pieces of the book before you get to that full draft. And then the third trap really happens after the writing is finished, kind of all the way along, where you're actually underthinking the other parts. So you're overthinking the writing and the planning, but you're underthinking the promoting and the publishing and the positioning of the book. All of those things that you think, oh, I have time to do that. I'm going to worry about the marketing until the book is done. Really, you should be thinking about the marketing the whole way along. You should be talking about the book the whole way along. On those days where the writing isn't coming, it's feeling a little bit forced, maybe that's a good day to take a break and work on marketing instead. Making sure that you're putting as much or more effort into thinking about how you're talking about your book with other people as you are into the actual writing of the book itself.
I think that's a great point. It can be challenging, though. That's why I can really see how people hire you to help them be another voice, eyes, ears, perspective, because we're also too close to our own work. Oh, yes. And what might us be hyper focusing on something, it's over the head of someone. That's why I took my 7 steps and made it shorter and more condensed, because you just learn a lot. But to have someone like you with you in the process is a tremendous gift. And like I said, when I was reading this, I was like, oh, wouldn't it have been nice to have Emily help me? Because it's hard to write a book. My first book was a co-authored book. And so we had each other, and it's no simple feat, but it is rewarding. But those 3 blocks are huge. I am a classic overthinker, and I have really tried to force and pull myself into just kind of like getting it out there. You had a great line. You said, look, this doesn't have to be, I don't think you said like Pulitzer Prize. It doesn't have to be the best business book ever. It has to be enough to cater to your business and to your clients you want to serve and all those people. And I think that was another permission slip that you gave us, a lot of permission slips.
I talk a lot about how we think of writing as this really solitary thing. Like, I have to go in my office and shut the door and work on my writing now. What if we can make it more collaborative? That's what I preach with ghostwriting. It's a totally collaborative process that I do with my clients. We meet weekly. We talk through the book. I'm just there to do the discipline of the writing, basically. But even if you're writing your own book, you want to think about your support system. who's around for those moments where you're like, I don't think anybody's going to read this book. Why am I wasting my time? Or chapter 3 is just not coming together. I just don't know what I'm trying to say here. Like, who can you talk to about that? And it's just huge when there's a friend you can call, or someone else who's working on a book, or someone who's just maybe a little further down the path than you are, and you can say, how did you do this? How did you get around this challenge? It's so helpful to have those people.
We need support. The earlier, the better. So let's talk about now the big idea, which this is a big part of the book. And where would we start to kind of really learn what is our big idea? What are some of your best tips and practices?
Yeah, this is a great question. So again, I say go back to what you've already created and look at what's really resonating with your people. So, look at your social media posts and see which ones have done the best, and think about why. Think about, was it the language that you were using? Was it the wording? Was it a particular phrase that caught people's attention? What was it about that piece that really grabbed people? If you want to, you can do some market research at this point. So, maybe you're circling around idea. Maybe you're like, I think this is my idea. It really hits me in my body in the right way. Like, I just feel like, ooh, I got something here. And I'd start talking about it with people. Go to a networking event and say, I've got this idea. What do you think about this? Or what's your biggest challenge with this topic you're thinking about writing about? And it helps you figure out where your readers are at, because you really want to try to meet them there. But I like this idea of a Venn diagram. You have ideas that really resonate with your audience on one hand. You have ideas that really resonate with you and hit you in that spot in your body where you're like, yes, this is it. And then there are the things that are kind of a gap in the industry. Nobody's talking about this in my industry, or I've looked on Amazon and there's no book about this thing. Find that sweet spot where it resonates with your audience, it resonates with you, and no one else is talking about this thing in the way you are. That's the sweet spot. That's the big idea. And then you start writing. And my biggest tip about getting the writing done is set a weekly word count goal for yourself.
Yes.
To me, that was I'm big into streaks, I don't want to break my Wordle streak. I don't want to break my, my exercise streak. I've exercised every day since whatever date, and so it's the same with a book. Okay. I'm hitting my word count goal every week, and, it feels really good. And from there, it's simple math. I want my book to be done by this date. I know that I always tell people 40,000 words is a good target for a business book, something someone can read in an afternoon. You don't need to belabor the points, right? 40,000 words is a great place to go. And then you just divide it by the number of weeks that you're trying to get the thing done. And that's your weekly word count goal. Real simple.
Yeah.
And then that's how you get to your draft. That's how you get to that messy first draft.
And that's what we need, because like I was telling you before we went live, in April, I said, I'm going to do an author branding podcast. So I kind of got off track doing that until I realized, what are you doing? You're procrastinating, Michelle. I'm the queen of procrastination, because it's hard work, but I love it, but it's hard work. So I'm always fighting the resistance. And another good book on that I pulled out is Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. He, calls resistance what it is. And that has killed more people's dreams and big ideas and beautiful things. And that's why we're talking today, because I know there's so many people, especially women on the sidelines, or just wanting to get their big stuff, even themselves out there, and they're not. And like you wrote, that's why you have the book. It's, it's unwritten. Right. All the things are unwritten. We got to fix that.
Your expertise, you are an expert, whether you write a book or not. Your expertise is unwritten until that book is out of your head. And I think it's important also to notice that if you're really struggling to get the book done, it's probably not a problem with writing or any of that. It might be a challenge with the business. There might be that's missing in the business. And once you kind of put that puzzle piece into place, the book kind of that's what happened with my book. My friend was like, you have to write a book about how to write a business book. And I was like, there's so many books about writing out there. Yeah. But when I sat down to start writing it, it fell out of my brain. It was 2 months and to get my draft done. It literally fell out of my brain. So that's when you're really hitting on that.
I agree, because when I was writing, it was such a struggle earlier this year, because I was doing my 7-step and I had a whole different take on it, even though it's still kind of the same thing, but I positioned it very differently. And several months later, it just fell into place. Inside, it just wasn't right. And the same thing happened when we wrote the LinkedIn branding book. Michelle and I wrote this first part and we're like, this doesn't seem like us. So we kind of scrapped that and rewrote it, and then it just flowed. So I think listen to your intuition about your book. The answers are there. I want to talk about two important things that this book is so good about: positioning and then the promotion. But you really did a wonderful job, because this is some of the work I do in my Own Your L.A.N.E about really, it's all about positioning yourself before you brand yourself. And you hit some of the important things. And I see, especially when I help people with their branding, they're not positioned enough, with the problem, the promise, and the point of view. And I want to give you a big shout out and kudos, because you did such a wonderful job on that, how your book should be a little bit different. And I even caught myself, because I know what I wanted, but then I'd get off track and go, nope, come back here, because you got to have an audience in mind. And it's easier when you even think, I'm writing this to XYZ person as a reader. So thank you for that. So I'm again, hold up this book. If you are wanting to read a book, this book is seriously, it changed everything for me. But I also want to give you a huge shout out, because you recognize that the promotion part is such an evolution, and it's almost a duality. It's like, you got to have both. And the one point we want to make is, it doesn't end the day or the week or maybe even the month the book is out. I see too many authors, they just never promote their book. I've actually maybe fallen behind on my bigger vision of what I wanted to do pre-marketing, because I had to kind of redo everything. But can I tell you, Emily, and this book has really given me some insights too. I am so excited for the coming year, because, and your book too, Emily, you've got such an evergreen book to get a PR and do all the things. So can you give our listeners some really top level pointers on their book, their big idea to get it out and keep it out there?
Yeah, this is a really important point. So marketing, right? We put it off. We don't want to think about it, because we're like, oh, I'm running a marathon here. I'm writing a book. Right? Now you're telling me I'm going to have to run another marathon. But yes, that's right. The marketing can feel that way as well. But there are low-key ways you can market and promote your book. And I recommend you do that while you're writing the book, even before you write the book. And the easiest to do is talk about the book. And I think people hesitate to do that, because they're afraid that, if I say I'm writing a book, then I'm committed to doing it, and I don't know if I'm actually going to finish it, right? We worry that someone might steal the idea if we put it out there. And I think that's small-minded thinking. I think that there are just so many benefits to sharing about your book as you're doing it, as you're working on it. You get feedback in real time. So if if the idea doesn't really pan out, it's not landing with the audience, you're going to know that right away. And you didn't spend 2 months writing about that thing that in the wrong way, in a way that your audience doesn't get. So you get such good feedback that you can take and use to make the book better. And the other thing is, no one is thinking about you and your book that's not being written and wondering, like, where's that book? I'm waiting for Michelle to finish her book, right? Nobody's doing that. So there's no real harm in putting it out there that you're doing it. And it makes you look good. It makes you look like an expert, right? If your competition doesn't have a book and you do, that's a huge leg up. So you're basically marketing your business while you're marketing your book. And that all starts from the very beginning. That all starts as you're writing. And then it's really important, like you mentioned, that the launch is just the beginning. Yes. I have 2,000 books sitting in a warehouse somewhere, slightly less than 2,000 now. But those books need to sell in about a year. So I basically have a year to really market this book and get those ideas out there. And it really, the momentum grows. I've talked to other authors, and this is what they say. They're like, I had no idea. I thought, it was going to be the month of my launch, and that was about it. But it grows. People ask you to come and talk about your book. You get podcast interviews. You're doing speaking based on now that you have a book, now that you're an author. It really does feed on itself. It's doing double duty for you. Yeah.
And yourself, your personal brand, your business brand, your author brand, and the ecosystem. That's why I'm so passionate about women, as my goal is to create more women thought leaders, get a business book out, especially because this is National Small Business Women's Month. And it's an important way to get your book and be seen as that go-to authority. And that's my whole thing. We all have expertise, a mission that can be shared, and it's not that hard. I mean, it's challenging, but it's not impossible, right? And if it was
Yeah.
so easy, everyone would do it, but it truly gives you that credibility. And it just has opportunities that you would never have imagined. And so that's why we want to encourage you. If you have a big idea or a book in you, Emily's book, Unwritten, we'll put a link in the show notes and a link in the comments so that you can just start finding out if you're about to write a book in the middle, or, you've just written a book. She has a marketing system. It was blown away. I was starting to feel a little like, oh my gosh, I'm behind, and I love the marketing. So it was so good. So you have a free course for us that you'd like to share. Tell us about that.
Yes, it's a free Notion course. If you're familiar with Notion, it's a time project management type of system. And it's a really simple mini course that I've created to help you find that big idea. So it has you start by mining your content, just as a way I was talking about it, finding those top pieces of content, what they're about, and then has you kind of narrow down, figure out what that big idea is, and then go out and test that idea. It gives you ways to do that. That's my freebie. You can find me also on my website, which is thepocketphd.com. And I am always on LinkedIn. That's how I met Michelle. And so you can always connect with me there. I'm happy to connect with folks. And Emily Crookston on LinkedIn.
Definitely check her out. If you even, need help with ghostwriting, developmental editing, all the things she can help you with. We'll put a link to your free course in the comments and the show notes as well, because that's a tremendous asset. Thank you for that. Emily, this has been tremendous to help us not overthink. And, I am the classic overthinker, so you absolutely have helped me as well. So I want to thank you personally. Love it. But don't overthink. We don't need permission. We just need a plan and a process. And she lays it all out in Unwritten. And so that you can truly get your brilliance out into the world. So thank you again, Emily, for being on the show. Amazing. So for those who are ready to get visible and you're feeling held back, head on over to michellebgriffin.com and get my free audio masterclass on how to put yourself out there. I talk about the 3 ways you can bust through all those roadblocks and get out there and get visible. That's at michellebgriffin.com. So remember, don't overthink it. Get out there. I promise you the opportunities and advantage comes your way. So keep putting yourself out there. You have a brand to build, a message to share, and people to impact. I'll catch you next time. Take care. That's all for today. In the meantime, are you ready to grow your visibility, personal brand, and thought leadership? Then head on over to michellebgriffin.com for free resources to get started and get going today. And until next time, thanks for listening.